Hello, this is François Le Goff from the European Chemicals Agency, and today I will introduce you the webinar on the new Euclid release version 7.01 that was published on the Euclid website on the 22nd of June 2023. Before we start, some usual information. During the day of the webinar, we will open the question and answers in Sli.do, the tool that you can join online, and using this hashtag Euclid 2023, you can connect to the Sli.do session on the webinar's day. We will keep the session open until 4 p.m. Helsinki time. You will see that using this platform, you can keep your questions anonymous, and all the questions will be answered during the day. After the webinar, we will publish all the questions and answers again on the webinar page hosted on the ECHA website. Today, at the agenda, I'll start with an introduction to the release. Then I will continue with an overview of the format changes, and my colleague Dorota will continue with some specific details on two examples of format changes. After that, Robin and Mark will do a demonstrations of new functionalities included in this release. And my colleague Severin will end the webinar with some tips from the help desk and some conclusions. So let's start with some introduction to the Euclid 6 2023 format release. This is the release plan for the year. You can see that at the end of May, we have released a major update, Euclid 6 version 7. It includes format changes. Then during the year, in July, August, we will have an optional service release, including some configuration changes. We'll communicate on this about this on the Euclid website later on. After that, we have the usual service release at the end of October. It will be a Euclid 6 version 7.x service release. And in 1 year, at the end of April 2024, we will come back with another Euclid major release, including format changes. So we are coming back to the usual schedule for the releases, with one major version per year in April and one additional service release in October. Where can you find information on the planned releases? You can go on the Euclid website at this page, and there, closer to each release, we add more details about the content of the new version. You can see on the right side of your screen the type of features that were introduced in the latest version of Euclid. So we have introduced some new functionalities, like the transfer of annotations, some advanced options for export of dossiers. We have the possibility to compare datasets, and later on in this webinar, you will see how this works in practice. There were some improvements also to the way the data is presented. When a new document is created, for example, the default name is properly specified and can be changed later on by the user if needed. We have also included new validation rules that are relevant for specific working contexts, and you will find more information about this on the website of the authorities accepting Euclid dossiers. If you want to see more details about the content of a release, I invite you to consult the release notes that are also available on the Euclid website. They contain all the information per Euclid release, and the release notes are updated each time a Euclid release is made available to all users, or when a Euclid release is made available to a group of users only. As I said already, one specificity of this release is that it does not only contain new features and improvements, but also format updates. And we will talk about this during this webinar today. But before that, because it's the first format update that we have since October 2021, I wanted to give you some reminders about what format update means in terms of Euclid data. So some words about the upgrade and migration. When you use the Euclid Updater tool, you can migrate your existing Euclid data to the new format. This is done automatically by the updater when you upgrade to the new version. There are some specificities depending on your installation types, though. It's good to be aware that For desktop versions, a backup of your data is automatically taken during the upgrade. So if there is a mistake or a problem during the upgrade, you can easily restore the previous version and contact the help desk to communicate the issues that you encountered. For ECA Cloud users, you will have your instance upgraded by default, starting from the day of the release. So the migrations is ongoing since the 22nd of May 2023 for this group of users. Then if you have a server installation, your server administrator will have to refer to the installation and upgrade manual and make sure that backups are taken before the upgrade is started. Because depending on your installation type and the type of database you use, the backup procedures are different. You will find further information, as I said, in the installation manual on the IUCLID website. Then a couple of points on the exchange of data and the compatibility. What I wanted to say is that all Euclid 6 files can be imported to the latest version of Euclid. So if you have on your drive, a hard drive, or if you receive from other Euclid users any Euclid 6 files, be sure that if you have the latest version of Euclid installed, you will be able to import these files. Now if you need to exchange data with a user who does not have the latest version of Euclid, you can still export your data in the major version before that. So if you are using Euclid 6 version 7, the new one, you will be able to export your dataset or your dossier in the version 6 format. This will allow the user with the previous version of Euclid to import the files in their database. It has to be noted, though, that it's not the preferred option to transfer and exchange data, because in that case, incompatible fields between the two versions will be saved as attachments. So data will not be preserved in the Euclid format as it should be and as it is in the new version of Euclid. Then last slide on some upgrade recommendations. So our recommendations from the Euclid team side is to upgrade to the latest version as soon as possible. But of course, you need to be aware of the recommendations from the relevant authorities to which you submit Euclid data. Some authorities can accept dossiers in several versions of Euclid, and you don't have necessarily to update to the new version, but if you do, then dossiers will be accepted still. There can be some authorities that reject the latest version of Euclid until they have updated their own systems. So this can take some time after a Euclid release for authorities to upgrade to the latest version. In that case, and if you have updated to the latest version, you can still export your dossier in the previous major version. So there is still a possibility for you to submit data to these authorities. And then some authorities can accept only the latest version of Euclid. So I recommend to check the the authorities that are receiving your data to make sure they accept the format you are using. And in case of incompatibilities of requirements between different authorities, you can always consult the ECA help desk to report these issues, because this is a topic that is being discussed at the level of the OECD to make sure that all Euclid users can easily use the latest version and submit data to different parts of the world. Let's move on to some specific information on the format changes now. I will start with an overview of the main changes done to the format. As a reminder, and to explain a bit how the Euclid format is organized, we separate the data that is harmonized at OECD level and used by all or at least many Euclid users. And these are so-called OECD harmonized templates or Euclid documents or Euclid entities. And then on the right side, you see that there are extensions to the Euclid format dedicated to fulfill the requirements of specific regulatory authorities or programs. We have extensions that are there since quite some time and well known for EU REACH, the CLP regulation under EU as well, the regulations for biocides in Europe. And this year in the Euclid release, we have introduced additional extensions of the format to support the future requirements of the EU Drinking Water Directive, the future requirements for data publication by EFSA and ECHA. Then we have also existing extensions to support the requirements from Australia and from New Zealand. And this year we have added also a prototype for UK REACH in order to test configuration and customization possibilities. This is only for testing purposes and not for submitting data in production. This slide gives you an overview of the type of requirements we have received in the past for the Euclid format and that we have implemented this year in the May release. For the preparation of the format changes in May this year, we have processed and we went through a lot of requirements, and we have prioritized together with the OECD Euclid group around 130 of them, and they have been implemented as changes in the new version. You can see where these changes were made. In general, they were made to the OECD part of the format or to the harmonized part of the format, but you can see that many changes were made for the plant protection products in EU as well, or for REACH or CLP. The main drivers for the 2023 update are changes that occurred, for example, in the REACH annexes updates that were published in EU last year. We are also preparing for the support of the EU Drinking Water Directive, and EFSA is working also on an update of the microorganisms requirements that were published in the regulation last year as well. We have made also improvements in the way we collect data and we process data for existing regulations. And we are working in ECHA also on a project to replace the SPC XML editor used for biocidal products by Euclid. You will learn more about this a bit later in this webinar. Then we have also taken into account proposals that were approved at the OECD level in 2022 and that are now implemented in this latest Euclid release. I invite you to consult the dedicated page on the Euclid site for the format changes. You have the address on this slide. Together with the format update, we release a format documentation package. This is mainly targeted to the developers or solutions managers who are developing tools in integrating with Euclid. So they can find more information about the XML schema definition files. We have also more user-readable Euclid documents representation in doc format. We have a list of all Euclid fields in an Excel file, and we also provide a comparison file showing the differences between the version 6 and the version 7 of the format. As an example, and to support also the update to the new version, we share the migration rules that we have implemented in Euclid to move from version 6 of the format to version 7. And we have also the specifications of the dynamic content rules, which are describing the way the conditional display is implemented in some Euclid forms. Let's go through some specific changes introduced in this version of Euclid. First, we have implemented proposals that were made by the OECD Secretariat to update OECD harmonized templates to take into account the latest OECD test guidelines. So you can see the list here of the parts of the formats that were impacted. We updated, for example, the way we report study summaries for short-term toxicity to fish, or for skin sensitization, or for phototoxicity in vitro, for example. You will find more information about this update on the OECD Harmonized Templates website. The link is available on this slide. Another example of change that was done in all the OECD Harmonized Templates is on the way we report the study period. Before, the study period was reported as a text field, and now it has been more structured. and you can provide the start date and an end date for the study period. And still you have the possibility to provide a remark in text. We have also tried to simplify a bit the way the attachments are stored in the OECD harmonized templates, and we have removed the field illustration and moved it to the section where you can attach documents. So you can attach files, pictures, for example, in this field as well. Moving on to other examples of format changes in the OECD harmonized templates. These ones were made to update the study summaries in order to report the weight of evidence in line with the latest revision of the REACH annexes. So it's now clearer on how to report weight of evidence justification. It's a new type of information that can be added. And you can also justify the type of information using a text template specifically written for reporting weight of evidence justification. And you can cross-reference or make cross-references to additional weight of evidence sources, so other study summaries that are used in connection to your weight of evidence justification. We have also, in some relevant templates, OECD harmonized templates, added the possibility to justify when a high dose level is used or when there are deviations from the high dose level. In addition to that, minor changes were done, for example, in the fields endpoints or justification of data waiving in some OECD harmonized templates. If you want to know more about these changes and particularly the impact on REACH registrations, I invite you to look at the information we published on the ECHA website for this and the webinar that was hosted some weeks ago. Moving on to another change, we have made a proposal with the IUCLID release to harmonize not only study summaries, but endpoint summaries. So endpoint summaries are a summary of all the information available in different studies for the same endpoint. These summaries were existing before, but were not harmonized at an OECD level. So together with a group of experts from different countries and different organizations, we have worked in the past month on a proposal to harmonize the way the endpoints were summarized under different regulations. And we agreed on a joint proposal to have one endpoint summary per endpoint. And these endpoint summaries have been sent to the OECD Harmonized Templates group, and the outcome is 105 endpoint summary harmonized. So most of the endpoint summaries that you will see in IUCLID are going to be harmonized at the OECD level. I would like to highlight also a change that was done to the OECD harmonized templates on toxicity to terrestrial arthropods. It's the OHT number 50-2. We met also with a group of experts from ECHA and EFSA, and also with New Zealand representatives from industry and the OECD to discuss on the way this type of information was reported in the templates. And the outcome of this project was to split the existing template into 3 separate templates. One for toxicity to bees, the second one for reporting information about toxicity to terrestrial arthropods other than bees, and finally, the last one to report information about toxicity to soil arthropods. So this is more in line with the type of studies available for terrestrial arthropods and more in line with the way the information requirements are specified in different jurisdictions. When you upgrade your data to the new version of IUCLID, there will be a mechanism to recognize the most appropriate target template, and the migration will be done automatically during upgrade to the new version of IUCLID. There are also some examples of changes to specific definition providers. I will list some of them. For example, the New Zealand HSNO organization has updated help text and table of contents for their relevant working contexts. As I mentioned already, for UK Reach, we have created a test extension so that they can explore in UK the customization possibilities of Euclid. And again, as a warning, this is not in production use, although you can see it in Euclid. The current recommendations for submission under UK Reach are remaining. Changes will be communicated separately later on. And then for EU, I will mention additional changes we did for Reach. For example, in the opt-out documents where we have clarified the justification and proposed more structure in the way justifications are reported for opt-outs. And we have also updated the inquiry document based on the update of the Reach annexes. And we have introduced also more information when an inquiry is done for read-across purposes. For CLP, changes have been made for Poisson Centers notifications, for example, in the way products are reported, and also there was an update of the EU product categorization system. For SKIP, I will mention the update of the article categories in the article document. And for plant protection products, there were several updates on existing documents, and new documents were created specifically to report information requirements for microorganisms. As I mentioned previously as well, we have created 2 additional extensions to support the data dissemination needs, both for EFSA and for ECHA. And we have done also changes to EU BPR, so Biocide Product Regulation documents, and we have introduced new documents for the Drinking Water Directive, but my colleague Dorota will explain this in the next session of this webinar. Before I finish, I wanted to highlight the fact that for these specific changes done to specific definition providers, you will find more information communicated by the relevant authorities or communicated within the relevant user groups. So that's all from my side. I will leave you with my colleague Dorota, who will give you more information about the format changes done for EU BPR and EU Drinking Water Directive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francois. My name is Dorota Burchardt-Sosnowska. I work in IUCLID team at ECHA in the unit B2, and I will present for you overview of format changes focusing on biocides and drinking water directive. Starting with the biocides. For this release, we provided a lot of improvement in the biocides document, and I will present them document by document. So in biocidal product composition, we allow now just one formulation type for a single product. We updated function pick list and we added several new phrases there. And also we updated some labels, substance generated in situ, product name, trade names of the product. And we hide checkboxes that are not relevant for the biocide components. In the document summary of product composition, we also updated the function pick list, and now both pick list in the product composition and in the summary of product composition are the same. We added the checkbox substance generated in situ, and we renamed product composition by related products. Also, the checkbox represent meta-SPC composition has been moved to the top of the document to make it easier. And the original label measures to protect humans, animals, and the environment has been restored. Then, in the location of the manufacturing sites, in the product dataset, we hide field manufacture on use, and in the substance dataset, we hide the same checkbox, and then also the field specified to which mixture product it applies, as this is not relevant for a substance. In the document intended uses and exposure, now the user can report data for more than 1 tier because we provided repeatable data set created for the exposure data. And we also added 2 new units describing estimated uptake. Also, 1 new unit has been added to the phrase group application rate under method of application and a description of this method. In the document summary and evaluation, we hide the field Other information relevant for summary of the biocidal product characteristics. Document biological properties of the microorganisms got several new fields to better classify organisms under assessment. We also harmonized the way in which links between the documents within the biocidal product family are created. So now, in all the cases, the link should be established in the composition documents. And at the same time, we hide the link in section 7.1 and 12.1. Continuing with the biocides and specifically with the summary of the product characteristics, a decision has been taken to further integrate IT tools used for biocides and replace the SPC editor by IUCLID. The go-live is planned for the fourth quarter this year. We have started to prepare IUCLID much in advance to make sure that the proposed solution has been sufficiently tested and the feature of the SPC editor can be reflected in IUCLID. New solution will create a possibility to reuse existing product datasets in IUCLID to create an SPC dataset. The structure of a SPC dossier is similar to a product authorization dossier. However, the table of content for active substance dataset is very short. It contains only data on identification, manufacturer, and location of manufacturing site. A main element of a dossier is still biocidal product. And then user can retrieve the data provided in an SPC dossier in form of the reports. Those reports contain all the data mentioned in Article 22 of the BPR, and they are in the RTF and PDF format. And they follow a grid structure of an SPC template. And in the future, we plan also a docs output in Word. In this release, we provided also some format changes related specifically to the SPC. So the phrase group language has been updated in SPC dossier header, and we adapted all the phrase groups containing country names to SPC requirements. So, for example, those are now containing the phrase European Union. New documents have been created. 2 new documents use specific directions for use and other SPC information. Later in the webinar, my colleagues Mark and Robin will do a demo of 2 other SPC-related features, the translation of the user interface and the report generation. For more information about plans and about SPC, please follow the given website. Next topic is the Drinking Water Directive, and I will start with a few words of introduction. The revised Drinking Water Directive aims to protect citizens and the environment from the harmful effects of contaminated drinking water and to improve access to drinking water. There will be European Union positive list, and only substances included in this list will be allowed to be used in the materials in contact with drinking water. And this will be ECHA who will establish the EU positive list by January 2025. And ECHA will be also later on responsible for maintaining this list. To maintain this list, ECHA will receive applications for addition of new substances, for update, or for removal of existing substances from this list. And the first first submissions will be expected to be received by ECHA in January 2025. This May IUCLID release is the first one containing Drinking Water Directive format. This format will be now tested and improved to ensure that the format coming in April 2024, which will be minimum viable product, is ready for the first submission expected in 2025. For the Drinking Water Directive, users will be able to submit 2 types of dossier. First dossier type is Drinking Water Directive Notification of Intention. This is to notify ECHA that an application for an addition of a new substance, update or removal of existing entry from the EU positive list will be submitted will be submitted later. This dossier contains some basic information in the dossier header, including material type and migration level, which will be expected migration level. And also important thing is date of planned application, so ECHA can plan its work. And then the table of contents is very short. It contains in focus on the general information, including identification of the substance and composition, and then intended application of the substance. The second type of a dossier covers all the data requirements for the Article 11 application. This application can be used for addition of a new substance, removal, or update. And dossier header contains more data, and also table of contents contains 8 sections, in which we reused around 60 harmonized Euclid documents. There is also a third type of the table of contents not suitable for a dossier. This is a subtable of contents to report data for relevant non-intentionally added substances or other elements and substances for consideration in the migration water. If such a substance will migrate to the water above some value, it will get a separate dataset and will be assessed as a condition of use for the main substance for which application is provided. The dataset for each substance will be linked in the section 1.5 of a main substance for which the application is provided. There is 8 new documents created specifically for the drinking water format, data on migration of the substance and electrochemical test passivation, those are endpoint study records. We also have 2 versions of intended application of the substance document, microbiological activity of the substance, and 2 documents to provide data on related dataset, and also a placeholder for reports. In upcoming months, we will continue to work on the Euclid format for the Drinking Water Directive, considering feedback from the expert, feedback from testing, and new requirements that may appear, and also we will take into consideration development of the legal framework for the Drinking Water Directive applications. And we also invite interested users to join the IT Tools user group. So if you are interested in testing Euclid and providing your feedback on those new format, please contact ECHA at the given email. Thank you for your attention, and I will give the floor now to my colleagues Robin and Mark, who will show new Euclid functionalities in the demo.
Hello, my name is Robin Allen. I am part of the Euclid team at ECHA in the unit for computational assessment and alternative methods. I'm going to introduce a couple of features that are new in the latest release of Euclid 6. Firstly, background tasks. In previous versions of Euclid, tasks such as import and export have been handled as background tasks, but the user could not always see what was running. It is not always known how long a task will take to execute. So, for example, for export, the user had to wait and monitor the browser for when the exported file became available. If the user logged out, the export was cancelled. These limitations have been overcome by providing an interface to manage background tasks for the functionalities import, export, and generate report. The user benefits include having a clear view of what is running in the background, access to the results of the task whenever it is convenient for the users, and the ability to log out of Euclid 6 server without affecting the tasks. Import is accessed from the dashboard, for example, from this button. Export is accessed from either the list page of entities, as shown here, or from the 3-dot icon at the top right of the data window, here. Generate Report is also accessed from the three-dot menu. On starting the task, it appears as an item on a list page that is dedicated to background tasks. To get to this page, go to the dashboard and then click on the three-bar icon at the top left shown here. This opens the main menu, where Background Tasks has an entry. Here. Click on the menu entry to open the list page. A background task can be in one of four conditions. Running, indicated by an orange rotating icon. Completed successfully, which has a green icon with a tick. Cancelled by the user, indicated by a red icon with a cross and no error message. And finally, stopped due to error, shown by a red icon and a cross and a link to an error message here. Background tasks are listed in order of start time, most recent first. Delete completed applies to all tasks that are no longer running. Deleting a task removes its record from the list, but related data in Euclid are not deleted. The record of a task has a three-dot icon on the right, which gives access to actions that are specific to that type of task and its condition. A running task can only be cancelled. A completed task for Generate Report or Export allows the report or the exported data to be downloaded at any time after completion. The action can be repeated. A completed task for import allows the imported entity to be opened in the data window. Import of multiple IUCLID files at once in a zip file creates a background task per IUCLID file. Cancelled and erroneous tasks have only the option to be deleted. Next we move to Copy Annotations From, which is used to copy annotations between dossiers. It works for dossiers whose subject is either a substance or a mixture product. It is aimed mainly at the evaluation process carried out by a competent authority, but other uses are possible. Here are some factors to consider. It works only for dossiers, not raw datasets. The annotation must have been attached to the dossier after dossier creation, not to the dossier subject when it was a raw dataset. The two dossiers must have the same subject, judged by the UUID. The annotation must not be attached to a dossier header. Copying can be done from newer to older and older to newer dossiers. Copy Annotations From is accessed from the three-dot icon at the top of the data window whilst viewing a dossier, here. The feature provides a list of only dossiers that have the same subject as the selected dossier. Select the dossier from which annotations will be copied. On selecting a dossier from which to copy annotations, a window pops up that states the number of annotations that will be copied if you click on Continue. Annotations that were attached to the dossier subject before dossier creation are not counted. Annotations in a dossier header are counted but not copied. In the example to the right, there are 3 annotations attached to the source dossier, but only 2 will be copied because 1 is in the dossier header. Well, that ends my presentation. Thank you for watching. I now hand over to Mark Roberts.
From Euclid 6 version 7 onwards, Euclid provides the possibility to view the SPC Biocides working context in one of 25 languages other than the default English language. In this demonstration, I will elaborate how to enable the translation and show what is translated. Let's start with the table of contents view for the SPC working context. Here it is in English. The table of contents helps you to organize your data under specific headers or sections that indicate the type of information to be entered, such as the manufacturer of the biocidal product. If I move to the right, I see the rest of the working area of the SPC working context. I want to see this table of contents and any of the Euclid documents in the working area of the interface in the language of my choice. This is now possible for the SPC working context from Euclid 6 version 7 onwards. To do this, I will go to another tab so I keep the English for reference later. If I select the dashboard menu, which is available from almost anywhere in the interface, I will see a language selector under About Euclid. Clicking once on this, I can select the language I want to use for viewing the working area of my SPC. Let's select Finish and go to my SPC mixture dataset, which I have created for this demonstration. The first thing to note is that all the primary headers of the table of contents are now in the language I selected. The name My Mixture is still in English because this is a text value I entered in English. However, in preparing my dossier, any of these text values can be entered in the language for which you are preparing your dossier. For example, I can change the name of my mixture to the language relevant to the dossier I'm preparing. After saving, this text value, which is now in Finnish, will be stored as part of my mixture contents. Let's see a bit more how the translation works by using the Finnish and English versions together. In the English version, I can go to Manufacturer of the product and see a subchapter for the location of the manufacturing site. Let's do the same in Finnish. Here is the location of the manufacturing site in Finnish. As you can see, all of the table of contents for the SPC working context is translated, and this is repeated throughout. Let's see what else is translated. So far, we have seen that the table of contents is translated and that any text value can be entered in the relevant language of your choice. If we go into a compositional document, we can see two things. Firstly, each field label is translated. I put here in the value brief description, which is the English field label for this field. Secondly, for fields where you can select from a drop-down pick list, these predefined values are also translated. For example, in the country field, I've selected Austria and Finland in Finnish, as well as here in the component repeatable block, I've selected active substance in Finnish. As part of the enhancement to support data preparation in a language other than English, from Euclid 6 version 7 onwards, you can generate an SPC report that includes translations. The language used in the report is determined by the selection of language made in the dossier header. If we go to the English version, we can see in the dossier header that the current language is Finnish. Let's change this to English. And let's generate the report from here. And let's generate the SPC single product report in a PDF output. Here is the English version. I've also generated previously the Finnish version so we can compare going forward. The report is based on the previous SPC editor report, and the English version of this report was taken as the basis for translation. The report contains translations of the table of contents here, as well as the various headers found in the report, and in fact any text that is specific to the SPC report and does not come from Euclid itself has its own translation. The report also includes the translated drop-down pick list phrases. These translations are taken from the pick list phrases as displayed in the Euclid user interface and are not specific to the report. Currently, in this version, only the function pick list is translated, but in future versions, all of the pick list phrases will also be shown in their respective languages. If we take a look at the first page of the report, we can see how the translation works if we compare the English and Finnish versions. The title is a title specific to the report and does not come from Euclid and is translated. As mentioned, this goes for all report-specific texts. For example, the other titles on the cover page, such as the product name or the authorization number. The text underneath the title, or for instance, the product name text, is coming from Euclid and is reflecting the language I entered in Euclid itself. Let's look at the report's table of contents. Let's go to the Finnish version to show this. So now we're in the compositional section of the SPC report. Note here again that the section titles in section 2 and section 2.1 are translated into the language I selected in the dossier header. We can also see that the table titles are also translated and are report specific. Finally, we also have an example here of a pick list phrase defined in Euclid, which is also translated, the function of the active substance. This pick list phrase is not defined in the report, but is taken directly from the translation provided in the Euclid user interface. This concludes the demonstration of translations for the SPC working context. Euclid stores data on chemicals, and the Euclid comparison tool can help you to manage this data. From Euclid 6, version 7 onwards, the Euclid comparison tool supports the comparison of raw datasets, in addition to the existing comparison between dossiers and individual Euclid section documents. The ability to compare datasets permits a user to compare datasets of the following entity types: substances, mixture products, categories, as well as templates. The comparison of datasets, which is largely based on the comparison of dossiers, can help you to understand the content differences as well as the content similarities between two datasets. For this demonstration, I will show a couple of comparisons for mixtures and category entities, focusing on how the comparison works for datasets. Let's go to my mixtures list. I have 3 mixture datasets currently in my list. The comparison is especially helpful when you know 2 datasets have certain similarities or differences, and you want to quickly know where these similarities and differences are to be found. There are many scenarios where this feature may come in handy. In this case, I want to compare 2 SPC mixtures, or summary of product characteristics mixtures, which have an English base against a version I only just started for Finnish, and to see where the differences currently are. Let's go to my base. The first thing to note before launching the comparison is that as this is a dataset comparison and not a dossier comparison, the working context for the comparison will be the dataset from which you launch or trigger the comparison. The working context, to remind you, displays only those sections of the navigation tree which are relevant to that working context, and will use this data representation to make the comparison. Let's compare. I click on the 3 dots here, click compare, and I get a list of the mixture datasets I can compare against. Note that the search facility is similar to the dossier comparison in the sense that you can search by UUID or, for instance, the name of the mixture. And to give an example, if I wish to only search for the second data set, which is called my main mixture, I can put quotes around it, and it will do a literal search and only return this particular data set. However, for this demonstration, I want to compare against my newest finished version of this mixture. I can also inspect further, if I wish, the mixture by clicking on this icon here. This will open up the mixture in a new tab in case I want to look at something before comparing. But let's compare by simply selecting the mixture to compare against. As with the dossier comparison, a HTML file is generated, which can be saved on my computer or, for instance, shared in a shared location. Let's open this up. So as with the dossier comparison, I get a source and target information. The source is where I triggered the comparison from, and the target is the mixture datasets I compared against. The first part is the dataset contents. In the dossier comparison, this would be dossier contents. So this gives me a high-level indication of what is identical or different between the two datasets. I can see that my draft dossier header and my mixture both have differences. So there is content to be seen here. However, for all other entities, linked substances, legal entities, reference substances, and sites, these are all identical. So I know there's no changes here to inspect. I can click on difference and I will be transported immediately to the next section. The next section compares in a more granular level the differences between the section documents of my mixture. I can see, for example, that the composition has differences. I can see that the use information has differences, and so on. Again, if I want to go to the next part of the report to see the actual content differences, I can click on the different if I wish, or I could simply scroll down and I go to the third and final level of the report, which is field level content differences. Here I can actually see the actual differences between each dataset at a field level. For example, in my main mixture name, I can see my original name and my modified name. As you can see, in red is showing what has changed versus in green on the right, what has then been changed in the target. In the compositional information, I see that I've added a new country. Before I had Austria and Finland, but now I have Austria, Finland, and Sweden. I've changed the trade name of the product slightly, and I've changed the formulation type from a gel to a dispenser. If I scroll a bit further down, for instance, to the target organisms, I see that the developmental stage of the target pest has been changed from eggs to adults. And in the source mixed dataset from which I launched the comparison, I have target organisms that are not found in the target, which means that in the second dataset or the target dataset, I have removed this information about target organisms. Note that as you are comparing datasets, which is live data in your Euclid instance, this may result in different behavior to the dossier comparison. For example, if you are comparing two datasets that reference the same entity and they share, for example, the same reference substance, as I show here, if you change the reference substance, then the comparison will not show any changes because the reference substance was changed for both datasets. So for instance, here's my original dataset. Here's the one I compared against. You can see that in both datasets I use the same reference substance. Essentially, the comparison for datasets works the same across all the different entities, substances, categories, and templates. But to highlight the feature a little bit more, let's look at categories. I have two categories currently in my Euclid instance. Let's open the first. And without looking at the content, let's just compare immediately with my other category I have. And we'll be able to see what the differences are immediately. Here I am in the dataset comparison report for the two category datasets I compared. On quick examination, I can see that most of the content is identical. However, there are some differences. I can see, for instance, in the target that a new substance has been added as a member. On top of this, I can see some new legal entities have been added. These have probably come as part of the new substance I added. However, as mentioned, most of the content seems identical. There is a clear difference in the category object, however. Let's click on difference to see what these are. So I can see in comparison that for the source category dataset, there were some regulatory purposes added, but in the target, these have been removed. I can also see in the category documents reference in the category object that there is a clear difference. On the left-hand side, there's toxicological endpoints listed. On the right, this seems mostly ecotoxicological endpoints. Furthermore, there has been some new information added in the category definition, description, and rationale as well in the target category dataset. And that concludes the category dataset comparison demonstration. Thank you. The report generation of Euclid has been enhanced to allow reports to be generated from a so-called sub-entity, for example, a component of a mixture such as a substance entity. More details on how to make use of this feature as a report builder is available from the report's webpage, which you can see here. Currently, the feature has only been implemented for the DocM reports used in the context of the Plant Protection Products Regulation. The feature will be expanded to other reports based on user feedback to the Euclid team via dedicated user groups or the ECHA help desk, for example. This is how the feature works. Let's go to a mixture. And let's select the working context, EU PPP Active Substance Application Product. In the mixture, you can see that some documents reference other entities. In section 1, for example, which is common to all mixture entity types, there is a composition information, and within this composition information, there are referenced entities, such as a reference substance or another substance. Let's see another place where entities are referenced. If we go to this section, we can see a document called Other Representative Products. And if I go into this document, I can see that I am linking or referencing another mixture entity. This is a sub-entity of the report, for example. And if I go to the table of contents, I can see this referenced entity here. If I select this entity in the table of contents, a new option appears in the document level menu, and it's called Generate Sub-Entity Report. If I select this, I get a list of reports to generate from. As I said, only DocM reports currently generate sub-entity reports. And so if I choose one of these, for example, the document M product, focusing on the toxicological endpoints, I should get a report directly from this sub-entity and excludes information from the parent main entity. Here's the report. I can see that the title is the name of my sub-entity, representative product. If I click on the hyperlink just to make sure, for instance, I am transported to the representative product sub-entity. And that concludes this demonstration of the sub-entity report.
Hello, my name is Severin Sosingot, the last presenter for the day. I'd like to give you some tips on what to do while making a help desk request. The first tip is using the correct contact form. By using the correct contact forms, you ensure that your request goes to the correct service. For example, if you use a Rich IT contact form to make a Euclid request, your request will go to the Rich IT service. So please ensure that you're using the correct contact form. The correct contact form also ensures that we receive the metadata we need to understand and troubleshoot your issue. The metadata we ask for in the contact forms include versions, database type, request type, and many more. There are two contact forms on the ECHA website, one for Euclid installation server and desktop, and the other one is for the Euclid Cloud services. The second tip is to provide us with detailed information in your request. Provide us with the steps taken before encountering the issue that you're reporting. If possible, provide us with the screenshots and provide us also with all the error messages that you encounter. And lastly, please provide us with the log files, especially if you are facing technical issues like upgrading and migration, installation, or functionality issues. Everything you do in Euclid is logged in the log files. Have a look at FAQ 39 from our website if you need a description on how to retrieve the log files. Lastly, please read the information in our support page. Believe it or not, approximately 70% of the questions we receive already have answers in the manuals and the FAQ page. I encourage you to read the manuals before making a help desk request, especially the installation and update manual and the user functionality manual. So, before making a help desk ticket, check if the solution is in the manual. If it is not there, make a request using the correct contact form and be as detailed as possible. And do not forget to provide the relevant log files. Before concluding the webinar, I'd like to quickly have a recap of today. The new release is available on our website. It includes format changes, new features, and improvements. And if you want more details, please check out the release notes. The question and answer session using Sli.do is open until 4 p.m. Helsinki time. You may keep your questions anonymous if you wish. After the webinar, all the Q&As will be published on the webinar page in the upcoming days. Please follow us also on social media. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel where we share various Euclid video tutorials. Please follow us on LinkedIn where we share the latest news about Euclid. Contact us whenever you face any issues with Euclid, and please remember to use the correct contact form. Thank you very much for your participation. I hope the webinar was intuitive for you. Thank you.